of all these things, the easiest way to rebound is to forgive yourself. Because most of us did not start business to fail. Very few guys start a business and say, I'm planning this thing so that I close it in 2 years through bankruptcy. It doesn't work that way. There's some delulu in your head, which is why you're an entrepreneur. You think you're going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. I'm sorry, it will not be. But you keep on going every day. And even in a personal, I think in personal space, it's one of the things when I went through my bereavement, and Chris, my good friend, had already lost his wife. And one of the things that you go through is that you realize business does not stop because you're going through a divorce. Actually, business becomes more demanding when you're in your turmoil. And when you realize no one is coming, I think it's a realization at which you realize it just has to be done. And it sounds bravado, it sounds big, it sounds like some strength, but I can assure you, if you know there is no one who is coming, and the life of an entrepreneur is that lonely, no one is coming, it's only you can adjust, then if you turn and say, okay, what have I learned from this bad situation? And what can I do one step towards work? So what I would say is, for me, that whole bouncing back goes back to, I have a very healthy appreciation of the messes I make.
Thanks, George. As you've talked about painful moments that have helped you, that you never saw coming, but you have to deal with them. And I think my next question is to Teresa. You know, we all go through moments that we never really expected, moments that put you through fire. So even sometimes when you become an entrepreneur, you become an entrepreneur out of pressure. Pressure that you ask yourself, who baked me? Who put me here? This was not my plan. So I want to ask a very honest, personal question. Today you're an entrepreneur for a company called Clean Start, doing amazing stuff with a 30,000, 40,000 women. You're beginning to talk to, I remember I introduced you to my friend Catherine here, and for you to be part of the guys in this, what was the project?
The Africa Business Heroes.
The African Business Hero. You qualified. I remember I met you like that previous week. Catherine, who is here, she's a panelist. I told her, look, I met somebody amazing. Do you mind if she can join the African Business Heroes? And you qualified to be among the guys in Africa to have this conversation, right? It's a very, very intimidating group to be in, because it's a Pan-African conversation. You have to be very candid about how you get there. So it's how entrepreneurs help each other. There was no value for me. Why should I be? I just said, I think, Teresa, you can join this team. I just called my friend. I think there's somebody who must apply for this. And you ended up making it. Congratulations. So, Clean Start. Do you think you'd have been even possibly near to start Clean Start if you had not gone through the most traumatic experience in your life? Do you think right now you'd be seated as a banker, none of these nice big banks being acquired every year, now you'd be one of those guys going to be headhunted as Exco? Do you think you'd have even considered leaving that bank in life to do what you're doing today, which I think has significant impact at a continental level in terms of creating joy we talked about? Over to you.
I'll start by saying that looking back, connecting the dots backwards, I think the moments of pressure are some of the most beautiful moments we'll ever go through. And what I have come to learn is that when you find yourself in that moment, learn how to ask the right questions, as opposed to ask, why am I going through this? Why me? And all that kind of stuff. Begin to ask yourself, what is the best thing that can come out of this situation? And you know, it's the worst moment of time to have the frame of mind to be asking the right questions when you're going through pain. And that's the other thing. Human nature is very averse to painful situations, discomfort. Comfort is such a liar, for lack of a better word. Because, to your question, Mike, if I had never found myself in the deep of pits, sitting at the largest correctional facility for women in this country and asking myself, what on earth am I doing here? I mean, I've built my life in a way that I'm law-abiding, I'm doing the right thing, very well calculated. How on earth am I sitting in prison with my firstborn daughter? And you know how it's like for moms, how we prepare for our firstborn and you've bought everything, and then, goodness. So to begin, gathering your strength once again, and looking for the gold out of that kind of a situation. Like the first day when I got into Langata Women Maximum Prison, and I don't know how many people have ever been to visit a prison. I don't want to ask who has ever been convicted. Those are some of the most horrible spaces you'll find yourself in. Whether it's the lies, whether it's the shame. I mean, plus the headlines were reading, bank manager thief. And this is not your identity. You talked about identity, But it's just so many things at once. How do I redefine my identity? I was known as a bank manager. That's now gone. First and foremost, it's now a point of shame because the headlines are reading all the negative things. And then to add on to that, I'm now being referred to as an ex-con, like all the wrong identities you would ever want to be associated with. How do you begin? How do you rebuild? How do you keep your mind focused in the midst of the worst case scenario that could ever happen to you? So it's asking the right questions. It's surrounding yourself with the right people. But most importantly, it's during those moments of great, great pressure that the best of you, the genius that you have never ever come close to seeing of who you truly are, that really comes. Because as it has been said, no one is coming to save you. I mean, even if your family wants to save you, even if your friends wants to save you, at the end of the day, the person who holds the maximum job description of unstacking you is you. You have to get yourself out of that situation. You've got to get your mental mindset situation in a point where you're now building the best version. And I alluded to it, the point of no return. And I keep going back to that point of no return. Every time I find myself in those kinds of situations, I mean, that was the worst. But as I've continued building Clean Start, there are times when you've put out the budget, funding is an issue, the businesses you're doing aren't bringing back enough, the bureaucracies in our country, the corruption, the capital gap. You want to do X, but capital, you don't have the capital. The workforce as well, and so many other things. It's always asking myself, what's my point of no return? Because at that particular time when you think you will crash, it's at that particular moment that you could also take off. So turning around, and I've come to practice this thing I call thought replacement. So I've got all this anxiety, I've got all these fears, what could go wrong? But what I've come to learn is that what that does for me is just projecting into my future screen fear. It's projecting into my future screen everything that could go wrong. But what if I replace those thoughts with anticipation of everything that could go right. And then instead of putting brakes, instead of, going round in these cycles, I'm using my energy onto my ideas of how we will get unstuck from the situation that we found ourselves in. And, if you remember when you were young and it's Christmas Eve and you just can't wait for Christmas Day, you weren't anxious, you were anticipating. So just applying that model all the time so that you can project into your future solutions, and then have the most intention, how do I put it? I think the reason why a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck or do not get to the highest level of who they could become is because we don't have enough intention, enough intensity, enough velocity into the direction of the things that we desire. We are thinking about the things that could go wrong or the realities of the ground, but when you apply the principles of thrust, lift, and momentum, you always find yourself getting to the next levels. And very excited now to see that a moment that was meant to crush me or to, give me a future that was actually counted out. Literally, I would meet people and people would tell me, Teresa, do you realize you're done? Do you realize that you're so dented, you can't come out of this thing? And the options are just take a flight, leave the country, go rebuild yourself somewhere else. But you're thinking to yourself, I'm rebuilding myself in this very country, in this very situation. And just from applying those principles, the very place that was meant to completely finish me is the very place that is bringing life, not just to myself, but to millions of other women. It's a place where the DPP of this country, IG, judiciary, and all this kind of are saying, we need to rethink this thing. And saying to them, face on, we can't continue with this corruption. People are putting their best foot forward, but they've got to put some corruption tax on the side. We've got to have those conversations. I like what Renee said. Sometimes it truly has got to be you to bring that change, because if not us, then who? Yeah.
So, as you can see, sometimes you get shaped not by what you wanted, it's by experiences that force you to become an entrepreneur. I'm not sure how many of you